If someone had asked me 6 months ago whether I was happy, I wouldn't have hesitated to say yes. My life was stable, predictable in the best way possible. I had a steady job, a cozy home, a loving wife, and two wonderful kids who would run to greet me at the door every evening. Life was good, peaceful, secure, but everything started to fall apart the day I met Max again. Max had been my best friend since childhood. We grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same school, even attended the same university. We were inseparable back then, brothers in all but blood. From late-night adventures to getting into trouble together, we had built a lifetime of memories. But after college, our lives took different paths. I met Katya, fell in love, and got married. My focus shifted toward building a stable future, raising a family. Max, on the other hand, was always restless. He chased excitement, moved from city to city, tried different careers, traveled abroad. Every time we spoke, he had a new story, a new plan. At first, we stayed in touch. Calls, messages, the occasional visit. But as the years passed, our conversations became less frequent. Eventually, we lost contact altogether. To be honest, I never thought I'd see him again. That day started like any other Saturday. I had gone to the mall to pick up some gifts for my daughter's upcoming birthday. I was walking through the crowded aisles when I heard a voice behind me, one I hadn't heard in years. "No way! Is that really you?" I turned around, and there he was. Max looked almost the same. Still tall, still with that confident grin, the same mischievous glint in his eyes that had always made him the life of the party. But there were differences too. His clothes were expensive, his posture even more self-assured. He looked successful. "Max? Holy shit!" I laughed, genuinely surprised. "It's been what, 7 years?" We hugged, and just like that, it was as if no time had passed. He told me he had just moved back to the city for work. Some big job opportunity had brought him here, and he was planning to stay for a while. He asked about my life, if I was still married, if I had kids. I smiled proudly. "Yeah, two of them. And you? Settled down yet?" He scoffed. "You know me, man. Not really my thing. But hey, I'd love to meet them. And Katya, I bet she barely remembers me." I hesitated for a moment. Katya had never been particularly fond of Max back in the day. She always said our teenage years were a little too wild, that Max was a bad influence on me. But that was a long time ago. We were adults now. Things had changed. "You should come over," I said. "Katya would be shocked to see you." We exchanged numbers and promised to meet soon. As I walked away, I felt nothing but excitement. I was happy to have reconnected with an old friend, to bring a piece of my past back into my life. I had no idea I was letting a snake into my home. I couldn't escape the feeling that something had already been lost. Despite my attempts to fix things, the distance between Katya and me grew. Every conversation felt strained, every touch distant. The more I saw them together, the more I realized I was losing her. Not just to Max, but to something I couldn't explain. Max's presence in our home had become unavoidable. He wasn't just a guest anymore. He was part of our daily life. Katya was turning to him for comfort, for advice. Whenever something upset her, Max was the first person she reached out to. It felt like he was becoming everything I wasn't, everything I couldn't be. And every time I saw them laughing together, I felt like an outsider in my own home. The cracks in our relationship started showing. Katya and I began arguing more often. It wasn't dramatic, but there was a quiet resentment building between us. The more I tried to talk to her, the more she shut me out. And when I questioned her about Max, she dismissed my concerns. "You're being ridiculous," she'd say. "Max is just a friend." But I couldn't ignore the feeling that something deeper was happening. I began to question everything. Was I blind to this for months? Or had it all started with Max's return? I couldn't stop thinking about it. One evening, I decided to confront Max directly. I was angry, hurt, but I needed answers. I called him. "We need to talk," I said when he picked up. There was a pause before he spoke. "What's going on, man?" "I need to know if you're involved with her. I need to know what's really going on between you two." Max's voice was calm. "I'm not trying to come between you two, Mark," he said, but his words didn't reassure me. I could hear the tension. "It's happening, isn't it? You're not just friends anymore." Max sighed. "Katya and I, we've developed a connection. She's not the same with you anymore, Mark. His words hit harder than I expected. A part of me already knew, but hearing him admit it felt like a punch to the gut. How could you do this to me? I whispered. Max didn't have an answer. He just apologized. But it didn't change the fact that everything I had feared was true. My best friend had betrayed me, and my wife had chosen him over me. The following days were a blur. I stayed in the house, feeling like a stranger. Katya didn't try to fix things. She didn't apologize. It was clear to me now. She had made her choice. One evening, she sat down next to me, her face unreadable. I'm sorry, Mark, she said quietly, but I've made my decision. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I felt hollow inside. So, that's it then? I asked. Katya nodded. I think it is. Just like that, my life fell apart. I had no idea when or how. Max had taken my wife, my family, and now I was left with nothing but the ruins of my marriage. I didn't know what to do next. The house felt suffocating. I couldn't stay there. I needed to leave, to escape this place that had once felt like home. But where would I go? What would I do? All I knew was that I couldn't stay in a life that no longer existed. At first, everything felt natural. Max's return to our lives seemed like a blessing. He was the same charismatic, larger-than-life person I remembered. And Katya, always friendly and open, was delighted to see him again. Our evenings together were filled with laughter and stories, and I found myself reminiscing about the old days. It felt like no time had passed. But over the next few weeks, Max began to come over more often. What started as casual visits once or twice a week turned into regular appearances. Soon it was almost every day. Max wasn't just hanging out with me anymore. He was spending time with Katya and the kids. They talk about everything, current events, hobbies, even deep philosophical ideas. Katya seemed to be enjoying their conversations more than I'd expected, and in some ways, it was like they were developing their own bond. I didn't want to sound paranoid, but I noticed how comfortable they became around each other. Katya was spending more time laughing and chatting with Max than with me. And it wasn't just the time they spent together that bothered me. It was how they interacted. There was a certain familiarity between them, something that felt more intimate than just a friendship. I brushed it off at first, thinking I was being silly. After all, Max was my best friend. Katya was my wife. Surely I was just being overprotective. But then it started to wear on me. I'd come home after work, and Max would already be there, sitting at our kitchen table with Katya, joking and laughing like they were the oldest of friends. I tried not to let it bother me, but I couldn't help feeling like an outsider in my own home. One evening, I came home early, hoping to surprise Katya with a nice dinner. Instead, I found them sitting on the couch, deep in conversation. They both looked up as I entered, but it was clear they had been engrossed in their discussion. The way Max was looking at Katya, like he was completely captivated by her, sent a cold wave through me. I didn't let it show. I asked how their day had been, joined the conversation, and tried to act normal, but inside something was eating away at me. I had this nagging feeling that something was off, something I couldn't quite put into words. Later that evening, as I walked into the kitchen to grab a drink, I overheard their conversation. You know, if you weren't married, Max's voice was low, but I caught the implication instantly. Katya laughed lightly as though it was just a casual comment. If I weren't married, huh? She responded, her tone playful. My heart dropped. I stood frozen in the kitchen for a moment, struggling to breathe. I didn't know if I was more hurt or confused. Why would Max say something like that? Why would Katya laugh it off? I didn't say anything. I couldn't bring myself to confront them. Instead, I quietly grabbed my jacket and left the house, needing air, needing space. I drove aimlessly, my mind racing, trying to make sense of everything. Was I being paranoid? Was I overreacting? But as I thought about it, the more I realized something had shifted. Something was happening between them, and I couldn't just ignore it anymore. I wasn't sure what to do or how to approach the situation, but I knew that the bond between Katya and Max had become something deeper than just friendship, and I was terrified of what that might mean. It wasn't long after that night that the tension between Katya and me grew. At first, I tried to pretend like nothing had changed. I kept telling myself it was just me being insecure, overthinking things. But the more I saw them together, the more I felt like I was losing her. Not just to Max, but to something I couldn't even explain. The silliest things began to annoy me. Max's constant presence in our home, the way he would just drop by without warning, the long conversations he and Katya would have without me. Every time I walked in, they seemed so comfortable together. Too comfortable. It was like they shared a connection I didn't have access to anymore. Katya and I started fighting more. It wasn't big blowouts at first, it was the small things. She would snap at me over nothing, get defensive when I asked about Max, or brush off my concerns about how much time he was spending with her. "You're being ridiculous," she said one evening when I brought it up. "He's just a friend, Mark. You're acting like we're teenagers." Her words stung. I had never been the jealous type, but the way she dismissed my feelings made me feel invisible, like I didn't have a place in our own life anymore. I tried to talk to her, but she always shut me down, insisting I was overreacting. Our arguments became more frequent, and I could see the distance between us growing wider. I began to question everything about our relationship. Was it really just me, or was there something else? Why did she suddenly seem so distant? Why did she seem so eager to spend time with Max? The more I thought about it, the more I started noticing things I hadn't before. Little changes in her behavior. She was no longer as affectionate with me. She would go out with friends more often, and sometimes she'd even come home later than usual. When I asked where she'd been, her answers felt vague, like she was hiding something. One evening, I decided to confront her. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. "Katya, what's going on? Why are you pulling away from me? Why are you spending so much time with Max?" She seemed taken aback at first, but then, as if a switch flipped, her expression hardened. "You don't understand, do you?" she said, her voice cold. "You're always so busy, always so focused on work. Max is the only one who listens. He actually cares about what I have to say." Her words hit harder than I expected. It was like she was telling me I wasn't enough anymore. Like Max was everything I wasn't. I tried to hold back the tears, but they came anyway. "Are you telling me that you'd rather be with him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Katya didn't answer right away. She looked away, her gaze fixed on something distant. "I don't know," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Maybe I do." Those words cut through me like a knife. I had never felt so lost, so completely alone. That night, I barely slept. I couldn't stop thinking about what she had said, about what it meant for us, for our family. Max wasn't just a friend anymore. He had become something much more dangerous. He was a threat to everything I had worked so hard to build. I didn't know what to do anymore. My marriage was falling apart right before my eyes, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I wasn't sure if I could save us, but I knew that I couldn't just let go without a fight. I had to figure out what was really going on, even if it meant facing the hardest truths of my life. I packed my things and left the house. There was no dramatic departure, no final confrontation. I just couldn't stay there anymore, surrounded by memories of a life that had evaporated in front of my eyes. I stayed with a friend for a while, but even there, I couldn't escape the gnawing feeling of emptiness. Every moment felt surreal, like I was walking through a fog, unable to find clarity. The hardest part was the silence. My phone didn't ring with texts from Katya anymore. There were no more late-night conversations, no more shared dinners. Even the house, which used to be full of life, felt cold and foreign. The absence of the kids, my kids, was a wound that wouldn't heal. I hadn't even told them I was leaving. I wasn't sure how. How do you explain to your children that the world they know is falling apart? How do you break their hearts? I tried calling Katya, but she wouldn't pick up. When I did manage to reach her, the conversations were brief and uncomfortable. She was cold, distant. It wasn't the same woman I had spent years with, the woman I thought I knew. I asked her how things were going with Max, but she didn't answer directly. She just said they were figuring things out. The realization hit me like a wave. She wasn't just moving on. She had already moved on. I was the one left behind, left to pick up the pieces of a shattered life. Days turned into weeks, and I felt like I was losing myself. The depression set in. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I started to question everything, my choices, my life, my future. I kept thinking about what I could have done differently, what I missed. Was I too focused on work? Did I push her away without realizing it? Or was this always meant to happen? Max and Katya were everywhere. I saw them together in my mind, even when they weren't physically in front of me. It was a constant reminder of my failure, of my weakness. I kept wondering how Max could do this to me, how he could betray me like this. But the answer didn't come. No matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't make sense of it. One day I ran into Max by accident. I was at the grocery store trying to gather some essentials when I turned a corner and saw him standing there. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The silence between us was thick, suffocating. Finally, he spoke. Mark, I didn't want this to happen. I never meant for things to go this way. I couldn't even look at him. All I felt was rage and hurt. But most of all, I felt betrayed. Betrayed by the one person I thought would never hurt me. You didn't want this? I said, my voice shaky. What do you mean? You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew exactly what was at stake. Max didn't answer. He just stood there looking guilty. But it didn't matter. His apology didn't fix anything. It didn't change the reality of what had happened. I turned and walked away, not wanting to hear any more of his excuses. But it didn't matter. No words could undo the damage. No apologies could heal the wounds. When I got home that night, I sat in the dark, alone with my thoughts. The weight of everything settled on me like a heavy blanket. I wasn't sure how to move forward, or even if I could. The life I had built was gone, and I was left with the rubble. What was I supposed to do now? Where was I supposed to go from here? I had no answers, no direction, only a broken heart and the painful reality of a life that would never be the same again.